Hello, my name is Kika Dorsey, and I'm going to read from my book, Occupied, Vienna is a Broken Man and Daughter of Hunger. It's a story about World War II, specifically Germany and Austria. My mother was Austrian and grew up during that time period, and as she lost her memory, I tried to excavate stories of that time period. So the first half is mostly fictional, based on my research. And the second half is about my own legacy with my mother and taking care of her as she had Alzheimer's, and also my family and growing up in the Midwest. So the first poem will be from the first half. And the first poem I'm going to read is called Ingvild and the Soldiers. She was 6 and lived in an old castle. During the war, there were no men, no fathers, and when the women told her they were fighting, she didn't understand. The sirens were like the cry of wounded men, and sometimes they woke her when she dreamed about her mother sewing blouses or dolls with capes, red like raspberries sprinkled with sugar. Later, there were men in uniforms. A German soldier once whittled a wooden doll for her with a headscarf nailed on top, and later the English soldiers gave her roses. Close up, the soldiers, with their beards and cigarettes and uniforms, did not scare her, but when she saw them in the distance, silhouettes like shadows, they did. Once she went into the woods to pick raspberries and heard a noise. She thought they were soldiers and her heart skipped, but instead a deer crashed through the forest, leaping among the brambles, its coat the color of earth, eyes big and black as an eclipse moon. Another time she looked up at a mountain where the trees thinned out and thought the lone trees were Russian soldiers coming down to take her away. When the fighting came too close, the war drove them from the castle. Her mother buried their belongings in the box, the precious tea kettle with roses on it, the documents, but she took the wooden doll with the headscarf and the nails. Nails were like men, the way they stood straight on the mountaintops, the way they scattered when God spilled them as he built a mountain, the way they held Jesus on his cross. And sometimes she imagined her father holding the doll, his arms thick like the branches of the ash tree that stood bare in winter with nothing left to give but hope for spring. And then the second poem I'm going to read is from the second half, and this is a poem, the first poem of the second half, about my mother, who was in a nursing home in the memory care unit. And it's called Aftermath. She has been gone a long time, 13 years since her memory failed her and her language became crumbs for the sparrows, since she dangled her feet in the Danube and fed ducks and gazed at the blooming chestnut in the Prata. 6 years since she roamed the green hallways of the memory unit and stole fake pearls and photos from the other residents' rooms. 2 years since she walked hunched and unsteady and skimmed her hands to the walls to keep from falling, and 2 years of falling. She was born in 1943 during the war, when Nazis saluted their leader and sullied the word for Heil, when bombs tore through cities and wrenched the skies of salvation, emptied stomachs of all but fear. In the spring of 1945, it ended, a cold spring with hail, and my mother toddled through the house and sat on the Russian soldier's lap, who sang her songs and ran his fingers through her curls. She grew despite her hunger. She tasted foreign lands and languages. She stretched herself across an earth pocketed with bomb craters. I emptied the room of her belongings, stale-smelling clothes, cards from friends she was unable to read, paintings of fruit and flowers, and portraits of my father and sisters and me at 11. Her hairbrush is full of gray hair, and I pull out the oily strands, some white as snow. I think of white, the same as black, that blank sheet on which we sketch, in which we dream in the shadows, the bluntness of death, our backdrop, our curtain. I think how I will miss my mother, how I've missed her for years. You can find me at kikadorsey.com or Facebook.